I'm standing here with James Nottingham, and you just talked to a crowd at Bokmässan. And the title of your seminar was a bit provoking, about robots taking over. So will they?
Well, I was trying to be a bit provocative to get people interested, and my question was, will the robots take over teaching? And I think partly yes, and partly no. I know it's quite popular to say that many people will say we don't really need teachers anymore, we can learn everything we want online, and I don't think that's as true as that sounds. I think that there are many things that we can learn online, and from learning platforms and from different apps that these brilliant innovators are creating, and of which there seem to be a huge number in Sweden. You seem to be world leaders in that innovation, and I think that can help us a lot to allow students to move from knowing nothing to knowing quite a lot of things. But after that, as teachers, we need to engage with them to then go deep, to help them make connections, to challenge them, to question them, and so on. My presentation this morning was to say, you know, online and on these digital devices, there are amazing resources these days, so let's use them. Let's use them. Let's say to our students, next week we're going to be studying this new topic that you've not studied before, let's say about Pythagoras' theorem. So get online, go on to any one of the number of learning platforms and find out about Pythagoras' theorem. Find out the basics, find out about the cosines and the tangents, and find out about the hypotenuse. Go and find out. And then next week we will start from what you found out and we'll go deeply. And I think that's a much better way than trying to pretend that that technology doesn't exist, because it does. And our students are what we call digital natives, and they're brought up with these things. So let's make the best use of it and say, you go and find out the basics, and then I'll help you to go deep with it.
So you want these kind of preparations to be instead of homework, is that correct?
Yeah, I would say, in fact, there's so much research to suggest that homework is pretty limited in its impact. With younger children, very, very limited. With older kids, it can be quite powerful. But then even more powerful than that is what we might call preview, and flipped classrooms is an example of preview, where instead of giving homework that goes over what has been done before, you give them homework, or time to prepare anyway. It might not be homework, it might be in class time, it might be in school time, but you give them home preparation. So you say, so next week we'll start a brand new topic all about the water cycle. I want you to go and find out about it. That's your homework. Get online, get on these apps, go and find out. Go to the library, that's that thing that has all those books. Go to the library and find out about this, about the water cycle, and then we'll go from there. And when I've used that in every school I've taught in, and I've found it amazing that it's the kids who don't normally do very well who are so much more motivated, because they think, now I know what's coming up, now I can prepare, whereas before I didn't have a clue, and then I was starting from zero and everyone else seems to know more than me and I don't know what to do, so I give up. This is about saying, no, come on, we can do it. And in fact, in the UK, what we've found is the best way to close the gap, and by the gap I mean if there's the kids who are doing really well and the kids who are doing very badly, that gap, how do we close it? And as I understand it, that gap is widening here in Sweden. Yeah, and the same in the UK, is widening, and there's a lot of immigration, don't speak this language, and they don't have that tradition sometimes, the kids, and then becomes this ghettoization and kids giving up. Well, the best way to close that gap is to do this preview idea. So next week we'll be using language to do with eating and drinking. So go and find the words, go and find the language, come back to class, and then we'll practice it together. It's a really, really, what should we say? It's a common sense idea, actually. It's just not that common. Yeah. And
And what is preventing teachers from doing this? Is there something in the mindset, or?
I think partly it's it might be down to tradition. It might be down to, well, we've always done it this way. The story I used today was Kodak, and how Kodak back in 1975 created the first digital camera but didn't bring it to market because they said, we are the world's leaders at 35mm film, so we will not do anything with this digital camera. And then last year Kodak went bust. And my provocation to people was, are we becoming the Kodak teachers? Are we saying, well, let's not use that online stuff because I'm good at teaching, I can give information, and you are good at teaching, but rather than give the information, why not go for the depth, go for the challenges, go for the engagement? And so I don't think it's anything to do with teachers saying, I will not do it. I think it's partly because we get so much stuff thrown at us, and we're so flaming busy with things all the time, and change after change after change. So many of us just don't get the time to sit and think, is there a better way? What could we do? And people I meet, when I share this idea of preview, the vast majority say, sounds great, and they do it. So there's not a resistance to it. It's just that, well, there's so many things that we could change. It's just how do we...
Where to start.
Where do we start? Yeah. And then of course there's so much teacher bashing going on. You know, the politicians and the media and parents, and they just blame the teachers all the time for everything, as if, you know, the march that's going to happen here tomorrow is because education didn't happen properly, and all of a sudden teachers get blamed again and again and again and again. And it's, well, come on. You know, we can do what we can do, but we're all in this together, and let's hold our teachers up and say, you're doing a really good job. We can do even better.
Yes. And you've developed a concept, the learning pit.
Sure.
And could you tell our viewers about the learning pit? How does that work?
I created it for my students when I found that a lot of my students didn't like to say, I'm confused, I'm stuck, I don't get it. They felt embarrassed to say that, and I felt that was getting in the way of learning, because we know that we learn more when we're out of our comfort zone. So I had to make being out of your comfort zone more acceptable, more, normal, to be out of your comfort zone. So I thought I need a metaphor here, where they can say, I'm stuck, I'm confused, I don't get it, without saying those things. And so being in the pit was born. Now some people say, why does a pit, it's quite negative, why can't it be the mountain of learning? Well, if I'm at the top of the mountain, I feel quite good about myself, I feel a sense of achievement. But when you're confused and when you're stuck, do you feel a sense of achievement, or do you feel like, this is hard? So that's what I wanted to create, this sense of, I'm in the pit. But then it becomes a language in the classroom, I'm in the pit again. You know, and others say, I've come out of the pit now, shall I help you? Or, I'm in the pit, leave me alone, I'm thinking about it and I'll get there eventually. So it becomes that nice sort of code almost for saying, you could call it the zone of proximal development, like Vygotsky called it, but go for it if you want, but my students preferred calling it the pit, and it's worked very well. And actually, if you do a search online, it's quite surreal to me, having created it in my classroom once upon a time in the 90s. There are, the last time I did a search, 3.8 million hits on the learning pit. So there's quite a lot of them out there. And for me, it's about having that language for learning, so we can talk freely and openly and thoughtfully about what it's like being out of our comfort zone.
So what can teachers do to push students into the pit more?
Interesting. Don't push.
No.
Guide. Go with them. Say such things as, I'm confused, I don't understand, how does that work? And so it's like that Socratic idea of that learned ignorance that you're saying, well, I don't understand, I'm not sure. And we're trying to draw this out from the students. I've just, one of my new books called The Learning Challenge has just been translated into Swedish, and there's lots and lots of examples in there.
Utmaningsmodellen.
That's exactly what I was going to say. But so yes, that one, utmaningar. Yeah, I'm sure everyone's laughing now. But that's got lots and lots of examples of what we can do to take kids into the pit, how we can help them in the pit, the strategies they can use when they're in the pit, and what they can do to come out of the pit as well.
And this type of learning, is it for every kid, or are there situations, exceptions where you shouldn't? I
to be honest, I have never come across a pedagogy or a strategy that works for every single child. So if children are on the autistic spectrum, for example, then coming out of their comfort zone, on the one hand, will be very frightening, and on the other hand, they're probably out of their comfort zone more than most. So, and I address that in the book actually, that that the pit, you have to be very careful with particular students. But I do find, and here's an interesting thing, that it's the kids who typically struggle in normal lessons who take to it like ducks to water, because they think, well, I'm always confused, so it's just nice to have some company once in a while, and everyone's in the pit with me. It's more often than not actually the kids who are used to getting the right answer like that who find it a bit more confronting to begin with. But once they realise it's about exploration and investigation and adventure, then it becomes hey, let's go for it. So I won't say it suits 100%, but in my experience, it certainly helps the majority.
As a teacher, you need to step back a bit, or say that you are confused, as you say. Is this hard for teachers, not being the authority all the time?
Yeah, for some teachers it is. For many, that's good pedagogy. One of my favourite phrases is, "Children are great imitators, so give them something great to imitate." And that's as a teacher, it's also as a parent, as an adult in society. If I make a mistake, how I respond to that mistake teaches kids how to respond.
You want to move from the achievement focus to a learning focus. How does that relate to grading and testing and all these things where you have to prove that you know something?
Yeah, the grading and the proving and the national test, they're there. So that's it, they're there. But what can we do in the classroom? If we obsess with those, and maybe not even obsess, if we focus primarily on the grades, the problem is there are many students who either think, I've already got a good grade so I don't need to try anymore, or the reverse, I've got a bad grade and it's never going to be good, so why bother trying? So what I'm suggesting is, let's focus more on progress, the improvements over time. Let's do everything we can to amplify progress. And that's not because I live in some fairy world where grading doesn't exist, but the more progress I make, guess what? The better my grades are likely to be in the end. So testing, let's use testing to find out where they are, to take them to the next stage. Not, that's it, that's where they are. Use testing at the beginning, in the middle. Don't just leave it to the end. And I'm not an advocate for testing. I am an advocate for using testing, if we use testing, to look at progress. So let's say you and I take a test in Swedish. Guess who's going to do better? You are, of course. I might think, what's the point? And you might think, I'm already better than him, I don't need to try. And that's bad for both of us. But if we look at, so let's see how we're doing at the moment, and in a month's time we'll see how much progress we've made. Now what happens?
Chances are that you've progressed more.
Indeed. And you will start thinking, well, I've got to show some progress here, and I'm already starting at a very high level. Better get on with it. And I'm thinking, okay, great. I'm starting low down, so the only way is up. And I can make really good progress. And, again, it doesn't motivate 100%, but it does work with the majority, that it re-motivates them to think, it is worth it. It is worth it to do better. And I know the grades are coming, I know the exams are coming, but if I keep working at it bit by bit by bit by bit, I might just get a reasonable grade in a few years' time that I wouldn't do if I thought there's no point.
Thank you very much.
You're very, very welcome.